Good morning and welcome to the press conference from the Office of the Leader of the Opposition, hosted weekly by the Opposition and the United National Congress. Welcome to our live feed on several platforms. So we want to say good morning to all our viewers and listeners in Trinidad and Tobago and indeed across the world. This morning I'm joined by Senator Anil Roberts, and together we will be dealing with a few very burning issues in the national community, some of the critical matters that arise in the context of our public affairs at this time. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce a former Minister of Government, Member of Parliament in the lower house, and now Senator, the Honorable Anil Roberts, who will speak to us on some very critical issues affecting the national community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member of Parliament for Oropouche East and former Minister of Housing and Urban Development, the Honorable Rudal Munilal. Good morning. Ramadan Mubarak to the Muslim community and Shub Navatri to the Hindu community, and to all of Trinidad and Tobago, good morning. We are in times of chaos. The country is in collapse. Daphne Bartlett of the South Business Association said this morning that the economy is on the verge of collapse. Economists, social commentators, reporters, those in the know, understand that Trinidad and Tobago, we are in dire straits. Such are the times that even our traffic lights are not operational. Traffic lights. Think about this. Traffic lights. Our children are in cars, seated, seat belts, mothers, grandmothers, fathers, families, truck drivers, everybody utilizing the roads of Trinidad and Tobago. And we are doing so without safety and security of traffic lights. For the last 8 days, traffic lights in South, the East-West corridor, and all over Trinidad and Tobago have not been functioning. At least 7 accidents, some where injuries have been reported, have occurred due to failing traffic lights. This situation is untenable. I do not recall in my years, since I can ever remember being involved and remembering issues in Trinidad and Tobago, back to 1977, that we have had such a critical shirking of the responsibility of a government to not provide traffic lights. In Gulf City, Paria, Sunset Cove, Mova, the traffic lights are not working. And the Honorable Minister of Works and Transport admitted to the population when asked by the media 2 days ago that it is cash flow problems, that the government is unable to pay their bills to people who are servicing life-saving traffic lights. And therefore, all of our families, all of our people are at risk just by driving on the roads. This is an untenable position. Traffic lights, medicine, oncology drugs, there are certain aspects of Trinidad and Tobago life that are just absolutely critical. And the United National Congress is calling upon the government, the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Works and Transport, and the Prime Minister to sort out this problem immediately. Pay all contractors who are owed money for doing work that keeps our children safe, our families safe. We cannot continue to go on this way. What could be more important than ensuring that traffic lights are functioning with vehicles that have been described as death machines? When you talk about Arrive Alive in the Convincer, I was privileged to go there in 2007 at Movie Town, and just a head-on collision at 10 kilometers per hour. I wear my seatbelt every day religiously because of that. Think about children in a car traveling at 50 kilometers per hour, going into a head-on collision at an intersection because the traffic lights are not working and drivers do not know who is to go, where are they to go, or if they are, who has the right of way. It must be solved now. Trinidad and Tobago, this is the worst situation ever. And to the Minister of Works and Transport, do your job, get your funding, prioritize, because this cannot go 8 days and counting. We are hearing that the traffic lights at Mova have been serviced. Thank you to the contractor for doing this. for doing this. What is the position with the cash flow situation in Trinidad and Tobago that we cannot pay bills? We are hearing that at the airport, the CETA system, a system by way of registration of all passengers, linking us to developed countries and all countries across the world for security checks, terrorism checks, Interpol checks, security checks, has not been functioning at 100%. It is down to 50%. Only 50% of the check-in counters at the airport are working due to non-payment of bills to CETA, the software company providing safety and security to our traveling passengers. This puts our airport at risk of downgrade. This embarrasses Trinidad and Tobago and puts us on the terrorist alert watch. This could be one of the reasons why the United States of America advisory has advised that Trinidad and Tobago, their citizens, are not to travel here. That is a very sad indictment on the government of Trinidad and Tobago, Keith Christopher Rowley and the PNM. So could you please, government, pay the bills? I am not hearing any landlords complaining of non-payment. I am not seeing non-payment at Alexandra 3. I'm not seeing non-payment of rental at 1 Alexandra. I'm not seeing non-payment of rental of Faris Al-Rawi's building and his family's buildings. They seem to be getting their payments. But traffic lights and contractors who are keeping us safe and the CETA software seem to be having problems in collecting funds from the government. I am not seeing complaints from Mrs. Franklin Khan on the rental of her building, or I'm not seeing NCP Global Finance complaining about interest payments on loans of $3.81 billion taken by the government. Why are they prioritizing those who are friends and family? Our citizens need a responsible government who prioritizes the people of Trinidad and Tobago, all of us. So I call upon them to get serious and pay your bills. A second issue in Trinidad and Tobago, a critical one, as the energy sector has collapsed. Member of Parliament for Pointe-a-Pierre, David Lee, has told you all there was a motion of no confidence in the Minister of Energy and the Ministry of Energy because energy is in the worst position that it has been for 112 years since 1908. The entire Point Lisa's industrial estate is on the verge of collapse, operating at 18.7% capacity. Under the Kamla Prasad Bisesa administration and Kevin Ramnarine, that was up at 76%. Since the negotiation of the PNM, which involved the now Minister of Energy, who was a minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, conducting energy negotiations with the Prime Minister in Houston, NGC has collapsed. The margins have collapsed and companies are shutting down. 12 companies have shut down in Point Lisas since that negotiation in Houston in 2018. The Mark Loquan of NGC has admitted that the margins are gone and that we may, Frank Lukim has said, the country may have to suffer till 2022 or 2024 when we can renegotiate these contracts that were so poorly negotiated, that ensured that NGC made a loss for the first time in its history. After 2018-2019 profits of 1.8 billion US, NGC made a loss for the first time. This situation is untenable and probably leads to why the government is unable to pay its bills, like the traffic light contractors who are to service and keep us safe. But now we have a problem. With the recent reshuffling of the pack of jokers of ministers and the movement of the former Minister of National Security into energy, problems arise. The first one is with Nikwan Energy. Nikwan Energy, just to give you a backstory, the former executive chairman of Petrotrin, the late Malcolm Jones, executive chairman, which meant that he could take decisions on his own, unlike a regular chairman who requires board approval and so on. He got Trinidad and Tobago involved in the World GTL gas to liquids plant. Over $3 billion was invested. Equipment and assets to the tune of 400 million US was purchased for a failed plant that never worked. During our tenure as government, the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance was one lady called Alison Lewis. She was the one chairing and sitting in on our FNGP meetings and would advise the government on procurement, corporate governance, and the way forward. Alison Lewis, as the government changed in 2015, from the UNC to Rowley's PNM, jumped out of the Ministry of Finance and straight onto the board as the chairman of the Port Authority. She is now also on the Nikwan Energy Board, and I believe my information is that she's on the Republic Bank Board. Now, here where the problems come. The government under Kamala Prasad-Bissessar and former Attorney General Anand Ramlogan went after Malcolm Jones in order to try to recoup taxpayers' money. The lawyer for Malcolm Jones was Stuart Young. Stuart Young, when PNM took power, he swore in as a minister in the office of the Attorney General and the office of the Prime Minister. At that time, the Attorney General's office withdrew the case against Malcolm Jones without reason. Stuart Young was the attorney on record for Malcolm Jones. And when the government withdrew the case, he still received his fees for representing Malcolm Jones. He was intricately involved in the World GTL. He had knowledge and information from Malcolm Jones about the assets, the processes, and so on. Now that he is the Minister of Energy, and Nikwan Energy is providing the government and citizens of Trinidad and Tobago with a big headache, is the Minister of Energy conflicted on this issue? Must he recuse himself because of his past relationship with the World GTL issue, this plant, and Malcolm Jones? Must he recuse himself from all matters involving this? Why do I say this? Because I ask the question now, is Nikwan Energy insolvent? Their records show back in December 2020, they had cash balances of 400,000 US. They took a loan from Republic Bank, which is part-owned shares by the people of Trinidad and Tobago, of 120 million US. Since that time, Keith Christopher Rowley and his government, with great fanfare, opened the Nikwan plant. They are yet to produce and sell any product. They have not earned 1 cent. Their wage bill monthly is $511,000 US. My information is that workers have not been paid for a period of between 9 to 16 weeks. And that is a very serious indictment on the company. The company has had at least 4 or 5 incidents noted by the media and population, from fires to wax buildup to a downright explosion that ricocheted and rocketed and rocked the entire Southwest Peninsula as far as La Brea and Point Fortin. This company, we are asking, is it insolvent? And what is the risk to the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago? As you know, the PNM government under Keith Christopher Rowley gave ministers share of gas in 2018 to allow Nikwan Energy to move forward. This minister's share of gas is critical gas that belongs to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. The UNC is asking, how long is this gas committed to, and what are the exit clauses in the contract, seeing that the Nikwan plant seems to be a total, complete failure. Furthermore, assets worth about 350 million to 400 million US were sold and given to Nikwan Energy, of which Alison Lewis, a former permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance, is on the board, for the paltry sum of 10 million US cash and 25 million US worth of equity in shares. If this plant is insolvent, as the UNC now believes, because they are unable to produce, they are unable to sell, they are unable to pay their bills, they are unable to service the 120 million US loan taken from Republic Bank. If it is insolvent, what is the risk, or what is the value of the 25 million US dollar shares that the people of Trinidad and Tobago own? Because in our estimation, when a company is as bust and not making money, the shares are worth nothing. So Trinidad and Tobago would have lost their 25 million US on top of what the assets were originally purchased for, their 400 million US. So the ghost of Malcolm Jones and the PNM, supported, aided and abetted by his lawyer of record, Stuart Young, continues to pain the people and the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago. We must remember that this deal, this Nikwan Energy, only went ahead with the express approval of the condition precedent being set of Trinidad and Tobago's gas. What is the value of that gas? What is the quantity? Could that gas be diverted, and could the opportunity cost of giving Nikwan, a failing company, that gas not be better used in giving some other company, whether Proman or another viable company that could pay taxes, the utilization of this gas? This is another problem and cannot be solved by a person who upheld the purveyor of wrong in Malcolm Jones. We call upon Stuart Young to recuse himself from this matter, and we want a full report on Nikwan Energy so the taxpayers can know what is the position. Furthermore, is the government planning to bail out Nikwan Energy by paying off that 120 million loan to that is owed to Republic Bank? Is the government going to guarantee that loan? Are the taxpayers going to have to pull the bill? And they created a company, yes, in 2018 in order to sell the gas to Nikwan. All of this information must be made available to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, because it is the people's money, and the people's money is not even being used to fix traffic lights. So we continue and we ask for that update, because it looks like another debacle on top of Petrotrin shut down and remain shut down, and no sales, no foreign exchange. Trinidad and Tobago's energy sector is in a total and complete mess. On behalf of the workers, the UNC calls upon Nikwan Energy to pay their workers, because we are told that they have been working under dangerous circumstances and have not been paid for between 9 and 16 months. 9 and 16 weeks, thank you. And finally, we come to an issue of sport. Some may think sport is not an important topic. For me, sport is life, sport is culture, sport is patriotism, sport brings us together. Unfortunately, because of the chaos that is the PNM's COVID-19 sham, their COVID-19 protocols that are not based on science, we are unable to partake in sport. But some sports are given preferential treatment. Some can play golf and eat lunch and drink drinks in the golf club, while others cannot go and enjoy a sweat in the savannah. Our athletes are 89 days away from the Olympic Games, and our local athletes are at a disadvantage because, for example, the track and field, the Diamond League meets start next month by May 23rd. Our local athletes are not going to be able to participate because the Honorable Minister of Sports said that they will not be given priority for vaccinations. And you know that Europe and the developed countries are creating a passport system, a vaccination passport for entry. So our athletes with 89 days to go who are locally based are at a great disadvantage because of the incompetence, lack of care, consideration, and understanding of the PNM government. Furthermore, again, under the exemption policy, the COVID-19 protocols, we can see that some people can have weddings with 200 people and invite the Prime Minister. Andrew Gabriel, a financier and great friend of Dr. Rowley, can flout the laws, call people together, have a wedding. The media cannot even get a picture. It was the most secure wedding event in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. Yet others are being arrested and told that special police groups are coming to give them more tickets. Over 8,600 people, citizens, have been ticketed for not wearing masks and have $1,000 in these times to pay. Yet they cannot even pay it because the Honorable Attorney General has not even made the mechanism available for people to pay their fines. Now we see in sport some preferential treatment. A while ago, a month ago, Azim Basra, the president of cricket, asked and wrote to Minister Terence Dial Singh and to the CMO to ask for permission for national cricket games to go on, for the competitions to go on, and he was denied that permission. So there is no cricket, there are no leagues, nothing is going on in cricket. However, on Thursday 22nd, at Maloney Indoor Basketball, there was a basketball tournament where teams, 3-a-side teams, were charged $200 per team and given permission by Minister Terence Dial Singh to play basketball under the guise that it is a national team selection. But I am a sport aficionado. I love sport. there is no national competition or international competition for three-a-side basketball in the near future. Trinidad and Tobago was due to compete in an international competition, but the National Basketball Federation did not pay the 9,000 US to the international, so we are not invited. Therefore, there can be no national team selection because there is no pending competition, number one. Number two, why are if this was a national team selection on Thursday night, why are national players or prospective players being charged money to try out for a national team? No athletes, not football, cricket, no form, no fashion, not swimmers, cyclists, no athlete trying out for a national team is ever charged money. This was a tournament under the guise of a national team selection. There were over 10 teams of 4 players, 40 each, plus 12 officials, plus others. A total of 75 people gathered at the Maloney Indoor Center for at least 2 to 3 hours, breaking all protocols that were observed and dictated to us by the government of Trinidad and Tobago. Why do I bring this up? Because I hold here in my hand a letter written by the Minister of Health, signed by the Honorable Terence Dial Singh, Minister, dated March 10, 2021, addressed to the Honorable Brian Manning, MP, member for San Fernando East and Minister in the Ministry of Finance, 10A Navet Road, San Fernando. What is Brian Manning writing to the Minister of Health requesting permission for the National Basketball Federation to host a tournament and or a national selection? Is Brian Manning a member of the NBFT? Is he a member of the National Basketball Federation? We know that he had an affiliation and he was an executive member, but as a member of parliament, he has to recuse himself from any and all other objects or jobs or perspectives so that he can issue and attend to his duties without fear or favor, malice or ill will. So Brian Manning is writing on behalf of the National Basketball Federation to his colleague and cabinet minister Terence Dial Singh, in breach of the Integrity in Public Life Act, where you must not use your job, your position in any form or fashion to benefit any group or person or individual above others. Secondly, this clearly shows that Brian Manning and his colleague Terence Dial Singh, and by extension the National Basketball Federation, in attempting to subvert the COVID-19 sport regulations, have perpetrated a lie on the ministry, the CMO, and the Honorable Minister. Because, one, I am asking, is there an international competition for 3-on-3 basketball that Trinidad and Tobago is due to participate in? And if so, when? If there is no tournament, then there is no national team selection. The minister made it quite clear that our athletes for World Cup football and the Olympics and international competition will continue to train. Why is the Member of Parliament for San Fernando East writing a letter requesting permission to proceed with a basketball tournament / national selection on behalf of the National Federation? How has basketball, because of Brian Manning's letter, been given an opportunity on Thursday evening, and they even produced an entire schedule that I have here of tournament play 3-on-3 without any national team being selected? This has been done while cricket has been denied, rugby has been denied, other teams have been denied the opportunity to perform. The government of Trinidad and Tobago continues to discriminate, and I am asking, what special relationship does Brian Manning have with basketball that he does not have with the other 48 sporting organizations? Because if he would like to show me 48 more letters that he wrote to his honorable colleague Terence Dial Singh requesting permission for them to get special treatment also, I will be willing to read it, understand it, and disseminate disseminate it. This continues to show that the PNM continues to rule one law for one and another law for others. If it's not the exemption policy that keeps our daughters and sons away, they cannot come home to bury their loved ones, like Cindy, who could not bury her father in August 2020, her sister-in-law in January, and her brother-in-law in February. But Franklin Khan's daughter can come home to bury her papa, and I agree, and the UNC agrees, that she should be allowed to come and bury her beloved father. But what our position is, whether it's Franklin Khan daughter, Rowley daughter, or John Brown daughter, Doublesman daughter, CPEP worker daughter, teacher daughter, professor daughter, policeman daughter, fireman father, all citizens must be treated fairly and equitably under the law. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Senator Roberts. And I'm sure that members of the press will have, later in the proceedings, some questions to ask Senator Roberts based upon those revelations that involved abuse of office, at the least, and serious matters of corruption and the pilfering of taxpayers' money via corrupt deals in the energy sector in particular. A few matters to raise before we proceed to questions. This morning I wanted to begin by focusing on one of the key issues that affect us now, of course. It is the COVID-19 crisis we face, the crisis we face in terms of the poor and inadequate level of vaccination that is taking place. I want to remind the national community that there are countries in the world like Israel, for example, a population of 9 million. They have already inoculated 5.5 million persons in Israel. If you look at a smaller country, 1 million, a country called Bhutan, already 60% of their adult population have been inoculated. And there are other countries of the world that have moved rapidly. To this day, as of the data we received yesterday, 30,000 persons, 30,800 persons in Trinidad and Tobago have received their first shot of the vaccine. That means that 4.5% of the adult population in this country, 4.5% of the 700 persons we estimate that will reach herd immunity, 4.5% have received one dose of that vaccine. This is a terrible position to be in now when we reflect that the only way the world will fight and seek to conquer this pandemic is by mass vaccination. It is not sustainable that the human population will continue to wear masks, social distance, wash hands. That is not something that is sustainable over a long, long term. And many cultures of the world are based on congregation. Our entire social, cultural life has been based on congregating, on sharing, in some cases on touching, so that vaccination is really the one option available to us to conquer in some way. And if Trinidad and Tobago at the end of April is at 4.5%, it is a sad story as to where and when we will complete herd immunity, which is more or less 700,000 adults in Trinidad and Tobago. And we estimate that at the current pace we are going, it will be 2025 before we complete herd immunity and get this population up. Now, that has serious consequences, not only on health, it has consequences as it relates to economy, because this country has taken this position of locking down the airport, which is not border management, but locking down the airport, closing down the economy, and you are doing that when you have no end in sight. We have always accused the government of having absolutely no plan or policy or purpose in dealing with this COVID-19 situation. And today, I am told that healthcare officials who are on the front line, and they are now administering vaccines that are available, many of them don't have a clue when they will continue after this weekend. They don't know when the rest of the vaccines will arrive. Many persons who have taken the first dose don't know when the time comes in July, as the case may be, whether they have a second dose to get and where will that come from. So these are serious issues that arise, and the government has not been transparent. We have had very little disclosure as to when exactly we expect to have those vaccines that are required. That is linked as well to a major problem that we face now. Within recent time, we have had, unfortunately, the passing of the former Energy Minister, Franklin Kahn. As part of a mini cabinet reshuffle, and I put it in my own way a few days ago, what the Prime Minister did was that he really moved scrap iron from one side of the yard to another side of the yard. He has been unable to attract new talent. He has been unable to attract anyone with the sort of expertise required in energy or national security, and appointed Mr. Fitzgerald Ethelbert Hines as Minister of National Security. Now, I have here the tail of the tape, as they say in boxing. Mr. Hines has been in public life for some time now, and the population need to be reminded that Mr. Hines has served in the Ministry of National Security before. He has had a series of small periods of service throughout ministries. He has been in what could be about 8 ministries. In one case, Minister of State in the Ministry of Public Administration, December 2001 to October 2002. He has been in National Security, I said before, 2004, 2007. Has been in Works and Transport, incidentally, Minister of Works and Transport from 2015 to 2016, less than 12 months. Minister of Public Utilities, 2016 to 2017. So that Mr. Hines has been around. He has been Minister of Youth Development and National Service 2020 to 2021, I think about 8 months or so. Absolutely nothing has happened in that sector. Now, this is a minister who, when he was Public Utilities, stood in the Parliament and indicated that he had no idea, no clue about a $250 million deal between TSTT, which was under the ministry, and a telecom company in Trinidad and Tobago, part of a conglomerate. Mr. Hines said he had no idea of that and what was happening with that. He's now entrusted with national security. And the first point I make is that this country has absolutely no confidence that Fitzgerald Hines could step up to the plate and deliver in terms of national security and the crisis we face. The point I make related there has to do with border security and management policy. The former Minister of National Security, Stuart Young, was an unmitigated failure. And the fact that today we have a porous border, a strainer-like border on the southwestern peninsula of Trinidad, is a lasting testimony to his failure. His legacy is I think of having a bullhorn in front of the Queen's Park Oval, screaming to migrants. Under former Minister Stuart Young, this country has been hard hit by mass illegal entry of Venezuelans and other citizens from South American nations. This morning we asked a burning question, which I think is on the minds of a lot of people, but I don't know if some people are just afraid to ask. Where did the Brazilian variant come from? That is a multi-zillion pesos question that we want to ask. Where did this Brazilian variant 1 come from? Nobody's asking the question and nobody's answering the question. Now, the Prime Minister, before I think he took ill, he made a statement suggesting where the COVID incident was related to. He said he came from Penal, I think, and they had COVID there, and other places in South and so on. He was very clear on where the incidence of COVID was located. But today, no one in government is saying, where did the Brazilian variant 1 come from? Should we ask David Rudder? Maybe it came from the Bahia Girl in Moruga, as the song said many years ago. Why is the authorities deliberately not confronting this issue? The Prime Minister and the Minister of Health should indicate from their tracing where that came from, because that has serious consequences for our health. And Mr. Hines should focus at this time on a comprehensive border security and management policy to protect our shores. This government wrongly determined that border control meant airport closure. This was misconceived. This was a policy disaster. All they did was punish citizens by denying them the right to re-enter their homeland, while thousands of persons came into this country illegally. The illegal migrants To illegal migrants, the only threat they face is the waters off the coast of Trinidad and Tobago. This is why within the last 24 hours or so, a horrible incident developed, which is in the newspaper today, where a boat capsized in the waters between Venezuela and Trinidad and Tobago. We are told there were 25 passengers, of which they have retrieved, I believe, 3 bodies. So that about 21, 22 persons are still missing and feared to have drowned. This is an unmitigated disaster. We have absolutely no word from the clueless Minister of National Security, Hines, or for that matter from the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard. Now, it cannot be that because they are not citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, we don't care about their lives. They are coming to Trinidad and Tobago. They believe the only thing they have to fear is the water. It can't be that they fear the Coast Guard or they fear police or anybody. It is the water. And the aim of border management is to create a balance between security and the legal flow of people and goods. Our national border management capabilities have collapsed under Stuart Young and will get worse under Minister Hines, who has no track record at all in government and no track record of keeping a job. Our capabilities in joint operations, joint intelligence gathering, development of border forces, investigative procedures, community engagement programs, and prosecution for border infractions should be enhanced. This should have been done years ago. We must now focus on good practices associated with border management and security, such as inter- and intra-agency cooperation, enhanced international cooperation, border surveillance programs, engagement of border communities and local authorities, including councillors, border community policing programs, establishment of border security information exchange programs, conduct of joint multi-agency and interdisciplinary operations. And indeed, we must strengthen the law and institutions to deal with corruption as a serious risk to effective border security. These are the pillars upon which the United National Congress has outlined our own program in border management and border security. Regrettably, while we can share those views, we can share policy insights and strategies and so on, we have little hope that Minister Hines and national security and the government of this country will adopt some of those measures. As I said before, the vaccine crisis is really the crisis we face now. This country was once called the jewel of the Americas. In fact, there was a time we used to boast that Trinidad and Tobago was a small twin island republic. We punch what? We pack a punch heavier than our weight. Today it seems that we have lost weight. The Prime Minister is ill, as we know, and that raises another serious implication here. We have taken note of the Prime Minister's statement over the past few days and so on. He has been very critical of the UNC, and I'll come to that in a minute. But the Prime Minister is the only COVID-positive patient we know, there may be others, who remains in a house. There are certain questions we would like to ask. What are the health implications of this? Is there oxygen available at the house? Is there a ventilator machine available at the house? Are there professional nurses and doctors available, as in the Couva Hospital? Who is cleaning the house? Who are the security personnel? Are they protected? Are they trained? Are they at risk? Is he infecting more persons? And who is responsible for this recklessness? Where is food coming from? Why is the Prime Minister not in a hospital in Trinidad and Tobago when you are pronounced COVID positive? And we all know constituents or friends in some cases who unfortunately became positive. They are carted away to Cora. They are placed at the Couva facility. They go to Augustus Long, I believe, in Pointe-a-Pierre. Is the Prime Minister now a citizen above that of an ordinary citizen as far as health consequences are concerned? I must remind the national community that when Donald Trump contracted COVID, he went to the hospital. When Boris Johnson, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, contracted COVID, he was hospitalized. Why is it that Dr. Rowley remains at a home, at a house, where there are clearly certain risks to other persons around him? I can't imagine they would take the oxygen machine and the ventilation machine from the Scarborough Hospital and move it to the Prime Minister resident, treat the Prime Minister in the event of an emergency. I don't think you should do that, because there are other persons there who may have an emergency. I know over the years things moved from the Scarborough Hospital, I believe, to, what was it? There's a job site somewhere there. So I know there's a lot of movement between the Scarborough Hospital and other places in Tobago, but they cannot use equipment from the Scarborough Hospital or any hospital put in a home because you have one patient there. You are denying treatment. If you follow the news coming out of India, for example, there's a crisis with oxygen in India because of the infection rate. In Trinidad and Tobago, every day we have over 100 persons infected. Pretty soon we will have serious questions to ask concerning our capacity. And we cannot have a COVID positive patient who is taking away important equipment that may be used to others in the case of an emergency. We were also told that there were 35 persons who were isolated and quarantined who were in contact with the Honorable Prime Minister. This morning I asked the question, are any one of those 35, because we were never told who they were, although they may have been public officials, any one of those persons included diplomats or the relatives of diplomats in Port of Spain? Can we confirm that members of the diplomatic community abide by local health protocols as our diplomats abroad are required to do? Diplomatic status should not be a badge to violate local health laws and regulations. And this morning we asked the pertinent question whether or not persons in the company of Dr. Rowley at the Easter vacation in Tobago were also diplomats, whether they were isolated and quarantined in accordance with our local health regulations and health laws. Another matter that I would like to raise concerns the recent travel advisory. I think a lot have been made out of this. I have in my hand one article from the Jamaican Observer. It is dated 2019, March 10th. And this matter came up quite recently. The government is now writing to the United States authorities concerning terrorism, branding this country as a terrorist site and so on. But this matter arose before. This is not a new issue. Since 2019 or even before, U.S. travel advisory warns of terrorism threat in Trinidad. This is not a new matter. The government has made absolutely no inroads. They have done nothing to deal with this matter over the years, but now raise the matter again as if it is a new issue. The United States government already gave warnings over the years concerning a terrorist threat in Trinidad and Tobago. Then the other matter that arose is a matter where the United States, over the years as well, we have all the documents here, they have identified certain areas in this country that they advise their citizens, their employees, their workers and so on, not to go. And those areas, whether we like it or not, are areas that have been represented for donkey years by the People's National Movement. Now there's a deeper issue here. It is not that, we are trying to politicize the matter. In fact, I am not addressing the United States Congress at this moment, but the people of Trinidad and Tobago all know areas that are high, what we call hotspot, dangerous, and so on. I know of very few people who ever tell me they go in some of these areas to stroll in the evening for a post-dinner stroll. You don't do that. We all know this. So you're making a mountain out of a molehill by questioning the United National Congress observation, which has a deeper issue. The deeper issue there is that a political party in government has represented areas since independence. And to this day, those areas are the most unsafe in the country. And that has to do not only with the issue of security, but the issue of economic opportunity, of employment, of wealth generation, the breakdown of the family, the breakdown of the church, and etc., etc. Those are deeper issues. In a report by Selwyn Ryan, I believe about 5-6 ago, Youth at Risk, he highlighted the same thing that the American Embassy writes about, the areas of hotspot, the danger associated with it, and that report spoke about over the years, the breakdown of representation. It is common knowledge in Trinidad and Tobago, maybe not at Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, but it's common knowledge here that the members of parliament in Port of Spain, whether they be Mr. Hines, Mr. Young, I think Mr. Scotland now, Mr. Lyons, and so on, they represent areas that are dangerous. That is a fact. So the American embassy jumps up now to respond to a United Nations Congress press release or so on. I think the US embassy should stop identifying PNM strongholds. They should stop doing that. They may be embarrassing the PNM. But the fact of the matter is that anyone in Trinidad and Tobago who live here know where we call the hotspots, the danger areas and so on. And if the US embassy identify those areas, and they have been doing that for years, we raise the more serious issues as to what have we been doing over the years to meet and treat with those communities that are at risk. When we were in office, I remember very well, we introduced enormous work programs all around Port of Spain. When we introduced Color Me Orange, we introduced programs in the HDC with UDCOT, some programs and so on, to ensure that we created jobs in desperate, underprivileged areas so we will deal with crime. We ensure that in our projects we gave small contractors the ability to tender and to win contracts so we could create a community where there was enough employment so persons will not easily go to crime and to gangs and so on. So we were doing that kind of work. And today I believe that there is a tinge of hypocrisy for persons to be jumping on that bandwagon as if that is something new, as if, we suddenly made some amazing revelation. The next matter related to crime I wanted to remind the national community is that to this day, we have had no indication of when the pepper spray regulations and or laws would be changed to ensure that there can be the importation and the sale of pepper spray and other non-lethal devices for particularly vulnerable groups of persons, including women, who are at the risk of criminal brutality. I want to remind the national community that this matter was raised in 2017 by the United Nations Congress. In the aftermath of the murder of Ashanti Riley, we again raised this issue. The Commissioner of Police, Gary Griffith, came out in support at that time. In the aftermath of the kidnapping and brutal murder of Andrea Barrett, I believe at the end of January, early February, the Attorney General announced that the National Security Council approved it on 12th of February. They came after to say that the Cabinet gave further approval for that. It is now before Cabinet, February 18th. Notwithstanding that Minister Rambarat said that pepper spray was more deadly than a gun or something like that. I think he said that. But then at that time he was concentrating on doubles. So I don't know if he would have been of a clear mind. So the point is that since February 18th, they indicated it was before Cabinet. Today is what? April 25th, 26th, today. And at the end of April, there's absolutely no sight of this legislation, of these amendments to regulations, absolutely no sight, and persons are out there struggling. And we ask the government whether they are waiting on another Andrea Barrett before they implement the pepper spray legislation. The final matter I wish to raise concerns, well, we have already spoken briefly about the comments of the American embassy and so on, but I wanted to remind you in closing that a recent study by Dr. Justine Pierre, a prominent regional researcher and writer on human trafficking, illegal migrants' entry into the CARICOM area and so on, pointed out a fascinating development where that Dr. Pierre was able to pinpoint in research and academic work that Trinidad and Tobago has over 81 illegal entry points. Now that is a fascinating development, and these are matters that the government must deal with. These are matters that must occupy the attention of the Minister of National Security. It must not be spying on political opponents and spying on trade union leaders. Recently, members would know that I believe it was on Monday, 12th April, an aircraft from Tel Aviv, Israel, landed in Trinidad and Tobago carrying 50 persons. It landed at 8:24 p.m. in the evening. Those persons were met on the tarmac by two large buses that whisked them away, took them away. We were told later that they came here to deal with intelligence. Today we ask the government again to at least disclose in general terms, not in detail, who are they, what are they, What did they come here to do, and what is the cost of doing it? They are spending money on national security without disclosing the quantum of money. All we know is the Israeli company, Pegasus, I believe, landed 50 persons. That company has been cited in wrongdoing across the world. If it is not that company or a related company, we ask, what are they doing in Trinidad? Are they here to provide, for example, equipment and technology to decode messages, to hack our phones, our Facebook accounts, to hack our WhatsApp accounts, to hack our albums in some cases? What are they here for? And the government must come clean on this. And this is a matter I intend to raise in the National Security Committee of the Joint Select Committee of Parliament in the coming days as to what exactly are the Israelis doing in Trinidad and Tobago, where the government has not disclosed to any security committee, whether it's at Parliament, whether it's in the media, whether it is in a Joint Select Committee, they have not disclosed exactly what are they doing here. I think we'd want to leave it there. We'd want to leave it there and ask for questions from members of the press to both Senator Roberts and to myself at this time. Thank you all.
Yes. First question, I'll go all the way back to...
Could I make a suggestion that since we are moving microphones and all the equipment to Senator, if the reporters outside of the room and the reporters in this room, because we have very few, I want to indicate that we have very few persons in the room now. In fact, there are reporters out there. If you want to ask questions, I believe there's a system, or you can just WhatsApp us the questions, and we can take all the questions for Senator Roberts and then come back to me so that we don't have to be juggling the microphones. Okay.
I want to start first off with the Nikwan situation. Could you tell me about a worst case scenario that could happen with this semen error in connectivity?
The worst case scenario, that Nikwan could be a major risk to the lives and limbs of people in the fence line communities and of the other assets on the Petrotrin compound. The explosion that occurred was one of the largest in the history of Trinidad and Tobago, if not the largest. So there's the first risk that whatever they are doing there, with the previous days, there were fires there that videos came out and people were fired because the video got out and I showed it on my show. People were fired. Then there was the flare-ups of the wax that people were videoing and they could see the flare from 20 miles away, and then the explosion. So there's a risk that the technology is not proven, that there's some level of incompetence, and that's a danger to life and limb and property, number one. Number two, the problem of the financial problems now. It appears from our records that Nikwan has not made $1. Their debt profile and their lack of payments to their employees and their lack of future prospects of producing a product to sell while interest payments are due shows that their balance sheet does not look healthy. They have a $120 million US loan that they took. I am not sure if they took it on their own. Remember, the people of Trinidad and Tobago are equity shareholders in Nikwan because the PNM took 10 million US cash and 25 million US in shares. What types are these shares? Are they in ownership shares? Are they just money shares? We need more information, because when a company goes down, if we are owners, we are going to lose. We have already lost for 15 years over $3.5 billion. Now, at risk, we are asking, has the government assisted Nikwan Energy in any form or fashion to get that first loan of 120 million US? What is the guarantee, or what is the risk of the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago? What is the position? This deal cannot continue in secret. Furthermore, if our 25 million US in shares is worth zero, then we have lost that. What is the way forward? Then, the minister's share of gas that the PNM has given to Nikwan For how long, what quantities, and how can we exit that contract to make use of that gas at Point Lisas for some other money-making downstreamer to provide revenue. Furthermore, Nikwan advertised that they were looking to raise another 170 million US. I just heard that they're putting that on hold now, obviously, because I don't think any human being in their right mind would look to put one more cent in that project. The discussion, there is also the risk to those. We are asking what is the position also on after that explosion. We are hearing reports from citizens that the walls cracked, TV broke, things mash up, cars shattered, window glasses. What is the position? What is the remuneration? And is Nikwan able, with any cash flow possible, to repay or recoup citizens that got losses? Furthermore, that World GTL, because the PNM under Keith Rowley, Attorney General Faris Al-Rawi, and Minister in the Office of the Attorney General at the time, withdrew the civil case against Malcolm Jones, there is no possibility whatsoever of this country ever recouping the money that was lost because of its poor decisions. So this Nikwan energy is a very serious issue. The fact about conflict of interest, as we go further, a former permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance, who at the time was advising the government that this project was done, it was of no use, they could not, the money was dead, don't put any more money. She then came out on a board and jumped on a company that took the project and got a loan of 120 million US. Alison Lewis also sit on the board of Republic Bank? Because if you sit on the board of Republic Bank and you approve a loan for a company of which you sit on the board, and you were permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance that advised another government to not go forward, so that you can then you can come out, join the PNM, and move forward and create a risky, this entire Nikwan situation needs many questions from the media. We need many answers. Stuart Young was the lawyer of record for Malcolm Jones. He is now the Minister of Energy. If that doesn't make the entire population sit back and think, I do not know what else would.
Going on that point, there is supposed to be, or at least there is currently going on right now, an investigation into the explosion at Nikwan. All right, now, is there any kind of concern by the UNC because of how close the new minister is, or how close there could be a snafu somewhere?
Exactly. You see, bias must not bias does not have to be to actually exist. There must be the appearance of impartiality. So it may actually be that nothing may happen, that the minister may conduct himself very well. However, once you show that you have information, you have a connection, you have an affinity, you took positive actions to take your client out of court to remove the yoke of the taxpayer's burden from his neck, and now you're in a position where you can have an influence on the process, apparent bias exists, and therefore we call upon him to recuse himself from any and all matters involving Nikwan Energy. Furthermore, the attempts by the chairman, Ainsley Gill, to pass the buck onto Mr. Wells and has nothing to say and just put it onto the communication specialist is not good enough. We need information. We want to know what are the risks to the population with regards to health and safety and financially, because we cannot even get money for traffic lights.
As we talking about traffic lights, sorry, you did mention earlier that there were several accidents that occurred because of false traffic lights or traffic lights simply not working. Do you have like exact figures?
No, we need to get that because we are asking here through the media, and we want the media to get it, to ask the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service how many accidents occurred in the last 8 days at intersections where traffic lights weren't working. When the official figures come, we will have that. But we know, and I know off the record from social media and people who were involved in accidents, down to a police van yesterday, where I think 4 people were injured, that occurred at an intersection where a traffic light was not working. We know that traffic lights have not been working down by Cara Streets, Gulf City Mall, down in South, Mova, and on the East-West corridor. We would like reports from all over Trinidad. We have not received from Rio Claro, Matlot, Point 14, La Brea. We need a full information, full report, especially over the last 8 or 9 days of so that we could compare the frequency and take note. But it is simply logical. Traffic lights are there for a reason, to keep us safe, to put order in the country on the roadways. If they do not work, it's a recipe for disaster and chaos.
It gives the impression that apart from the contractor not receiving their payments, there was some willful act done to these traffic lights. What is the opposition take on this?
Well, the opposition take is this is the same playbook. The opposition put a yellow jersey in the Taruba Stadium that made it balloon from 175 million under Calder Hat to 1.23 billion, and just 4 or 5 cricket matches playing. The UNC put a big stone in the Kobo Star when it was traveling and it shut down. I guess the UNC sink the TNT Express. We put some yellow jersey wrong the propeller and it sink out there. I mean, reports don't know if it's confirmed that the TNT Express has sunk. If that is so, it just is representative of the country of Trinidad and Tobago under the PNM. Everything is sabotage. Everything is Kamla. Why would the UNC sabotage traffic lights? What traffic lights are only for PNM? Traffic lights are for the whole country. UNC, PNM, anybody. It's for pure safety. My children, my daughter, my family will be driving. What a ridiculous notion. For that to even come out of an adult's mouth shows how far the PNM has gone from reality. The UNC calls on the PNM to do their job. As Shamfa Kujo said in 2015, we in charge. You are in charge, PNM, and the whole country is collapsing from pothole to medicine, no vaccine, COVID-19, no jobs, broken down, energy sector collapse, no sporting activity, no culture, no carnival next year. No carnival next year. You heard what former Minister Munilal said. There will be no herd immunity, so there will be no carnival, not even a domestic one, because the borders are porous. Australia and New Zealand right now are open for business. They're in a bubble. Their restaurants are making money, their theaters, their parties, their nightclubs. We are on lockdown. Our cultural sector is gone. So there is absolutely no truth to the ridiculous notion that the UNC will sabotage traffic lights or do any such ridiculous. For someone to even think of that and say it, I have to worry about where they should go for their next checkup. It should not be COVID-19. They should go St. Anne's for a checkup. And furthermore, that is similar to the PNM saying on December 31st, 2019, by the Minister of National Security, then Stuart Young, that the UNC is paying criminals to randomly and sporadically kill innocent citizens. These people have lost their minds. They're off their rocker. They are incompetent. They have put 2 lawyers in charge of energy, and energy has collapsed. They put a lady who's jog in charge of sport. We have nowhere to go. They put a person who could not pass a pharmacological exam in charge of health, and then wonder why everything is collapsing in Trinidad and Tobago.
What pressure the opposition will apply on Minister of Energy, Stuart Young, to recuse himself from the Nippon Energy?
Well, as you could see, the Member of Parliament and Chief Whip, David Lee, had already called a motion of no confidence. David Lee has already been on top of this Nikwan issue. There will be questions in the Parliament as asked by Member of Parliament Rudal Munilal to deal with the Nikwan issue. The UNC is calling upon the citizens, the media, and all right-thinking people to protect. It's our job to present the information, but the people have the power. We need the people to help us also put pressure. We will put all pressure throughout the parliament, through questions, urgent questions, questions for written answer. We will continue to ensure that the ghost of Malcolm Jones does not continue to suffer generations of Trinidadians and Tobagonians again. But we need the people, we need the media to ask the questions. Where is this money coming from? Where is the gas? How do we get out of it? What is the position? Have citizens been repaid? Is there risk of blowing up? What is the risk of Petrotrin? Why is a lawyer in charge of the Ministry of Energy? Will this Minister of Energy recuse himself because of his past relationship with Malcolm Jones and GTL? This is just corporate governance. This is the way that we are supposed to run. We have gone backwards, and we have ministers procuring ferries, ministers renting out their own building, ministers renting the wife building, minister wife going in wedding and coming out with a contract. The country is in a mess.
Can I just ask former Minister Roberts 2 questions? One from, for you to answer, one from Joel Brown, TV6, and Joel is asking to you, Senator Roberts. I just want to read it correctly so we get it. Do you think the issue of the explosion at Nikon should be examined by the relevant Joint Select Committee of Parliament? And the second question from a viewer concerns whether you are aware or you want to comment on monies owed by the government to the CPL and whether that was responsible for the CPL using other territories for their cricket matches.
To answer the last one first, I am not aware of anything with regards to the CPL. As far as I'm concerned, having and hosting the CPL here for $7 million TT was an abject total waste in a COVID-19 pandemic shutdown with no benefits whatsoever, no marketing, no products to market, no refinery to sell, no tourism. Spending that money on marketing was ludicrous in the first place. As whether they were paid or not, I have no idea, but it looks like they cannot pay their bills. To the Nikwan, I would tell to Joel Brown, we need first and foremost international independent experts to go into that Nikwan plant. I am not an expert. We are not versed in this country in explosions, in risk. We need an internationally based firm to come in, do an audit of that plant, check it, seal it, give a report, and that should be laid in Parliament and discussed, yes, by the Joint Select Committee of Energy. We do not trust the current Minister of Energy to conduct any investigation. We do not trust the current Minister of National Security to conduct any investigation, and we do not believe that our fire services have the capability to do the necessary technical analysis of a plant of that nature, new technology. We need international experts to report to the Parliament and the Joint Select Committee so that we can be able to say what exactly is the risk. For now, we know that it has blown up. It can blow up again. We know they have not produced any product. We know workers have not been paid. We know that the plant has a buildup of wax and is a danger potentially to Trinidad and Tobago. That's what we know, and that's enough to pause.
Sure.
Now, I'm a little bit young, but from my experience, don't want you really but from my experience, I've never really heard of good travel advisory. The US putting out one of these things. Is this because of one party in particular? You would say, seeing that it has been consistent regardless of who was involved.
Well, if you study these matters, there are levels of travel advisory. You have 2, 3, 4. The latest one, I think, was level 4, which is a do not travel. The ones before, a couple of years ago, were level 2, level 3, which is be cautious when you travel. So that there are levels, and over the years, unless I'm mistaken again, this is the first time in memory that we have reached a level 4 travel advisory. But the United States government has always been warning about certain areas and kidnapping, for example, human trafficking, and so on. So those things recur. But they recur with the same name of the same communities. That is not a big thing. This is why I was saying earlier that there's no need to make statements and so on. I was taken aback personally because the United States Embassy chose to make a statement to respond to a UNC press release. Now, the United National Congress is entitled to interpret a travel advisory. We're entitled to interpret it and to address our minds to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. The United National Congress travel statement was not directed at the American Congress. It was directed to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. It is common knowledge, the communities and so on. Those things have been written about and so on for years, you know. So I thought that I was taken aback because the American embassy did not write anything when the vice president of Venezuela came here, did not write anything when aircrafts that were banned internationally were allowed to land in Piaco, and did not write anything on other matters as well, but would write something when the UNC issued a statement. So I think that the United States Embassy, they should be a bit cautious themselves. I myself have a very diplomatic language, as you know, and I'm often more of a diplomat when Mr. Roberts is around me. So they should be cautious in issuing statements.
As my brother has been diplomatic, let me go further to do the not so diplomatic part. Because the more critical issue, especially for certain newspapers in Trinidad and Tobago, is not whether the U.S. responded to the UNC, which they should not have, but there's no ambassador, no leadership there, so we forgive them for that, no big thing. However, do you realize that President Biden and Secretary Blinken did not invite Keith Christopher Rowley to the talks on climate change as they were discussing with CARICOM? That is a direct dismissal and disregard of Trinidad and Tobago. That is the story, not whether an advisory. There is an advisory, it's apolitical. The UNC and any opposition party has to deal with that because we find the PNM is not keeping us safe. They have collapsed the economy, the safety and security, they've shuffled a pack of jokers, and we are unsafe. So that's our business. The USA should not be in that. However, President Biden did not invite Keith Rowley. Keith Rowley is the chair of CARICOM now, and Biden looked past him and went to Honorable Prime Minister Holness and Gaston Brown of Antigua to invite them, and they're conducting discussions with them, leaving out Rowley. Furthermore, when President Biden was sworn in, Keith Rowley, as chair of CARICOM, jumped up and shouted at the mountaintops for an ease of sanctions on Venezuela. And Biden made the sanctions, he extended them and made them harsher because he wanted to promote democracy in Venezuela. He ignored Rowley's call to ease up the indicted narco-terrorist and narco-trafficker and drug trader and money launderer. When Keith Rowley talks today on his Facebook post yesterday about why the US would talk about terrorism in Trinidad, he is supporting and dancing the conga line and conducting business with Trafigura PTE, with our refinery, and Ansel Roger and Patriotic, and buying gas from Trafigura, selling it to ES Euro Shipping, and it's being offloaded at Palo Alto in Venezuela. He is upholding an indicted narco-terrorist. If you are aligning yourself with a terrorist, you are shocked, Rowley, that the USA says, be careful of Trinidad and Tobago. Took a prime minister seriously. You see, he may have thought that he was playing little domestic political games, but when a prime minister speaks, especially about a country, other countries take it seriously. So when he paid for advertisements all over the media to say, don't join ISIS, ISIS is not good, that was paid for by his government. Where in the world, in a situation where we don't have any terrorist threat, would a government pay for advertisements to go out internationally, globally, on radio and TV, that in this world of social media that says to our young people, don't join ISIS. That is like saying, my goodness, stay away from us. We are in ISIS. He was irresponsible. He marketed Trinidad and Tobago as a terrorist destination. He went against Muslims in Barataria, up in the mosque, looking and caring and looking for guns and trying to create a situation of terrorism in Trinidad and Tobago. And now we are on the watch list. That is due to Keith Christopher Rowley. So to the U.S. Embassy, we forgive you the little error, but please stay out of our domestic politics.
Okay, thank you very much. I just before the next question, to remind the national community as well that this matter of terrorism is not a new matter again. Over the years, there have been a lot of discussions, a lot of newspaper articles. I'm reminded, for example, that in 2018, there was a series of articles in the Guardian in the United Kingdom where they outlined Trinidad and Tobago's participation in ISIS and Trinidad and Tobago being a recruiting ground for persons joining ISIS. So that has been in the international media and in the international domain for some time. We can argue whether it's 100, 300, 400. That's irrelevant at this stage. But those matters have been around. So to jump up now and talk about, the Americans condemning the Americans about terrorism and so on, they have been doing that for a long time. I also took note of a statement Dr. Rowley made a few days ago. He popped up somewhere to do a press conference and was speaking about conspiracy theories and so on, and the UNC was involved in conspiracy theories, and he reflected that it was a QAnon, if that is the proper pronunciation of the term. Now, this is the same leader that came to Parliament with some fabricated emails that spoke about a prime minister conspiring to commit murder. This is the same leader that had a pink-head man. I think the man had a pink head. He wrote a book, and it was a Cambridge Analytica, said that the former government was stealing privacy information and so on. And they conned it. This pink-head man conned this government. I received a book from this man. It was free of charge, meaning you paid for it, the taxpayer paid for it. I got a free book paid for by the taxpayer because this government was buying books from this pink-head man because it had a few statements in the book that appeared to make allegations against the former administration. So Dr. Rowley has been involved in this pink-head man conspiracy. He had been involved in this Emailgate conspiracy. Today, if you would listen to them, somebody in a UNC jersey would pelt a stone and either hit the red light, the green light, or the amber light in the traffic lights. If you would listen to them, that is their narrative. And I think Dr. Rowley should really commit himself to a proper health institution and get the type of, the type of service and care that he needs at this time, rather than be just belting out and popping up, every few days and making what could be really irrational statements. The final matter I would raise before closing is the refinery. To this date, we have had no update on the Point-a-Pierre refinery. When the deal with the Patriotic Technologies collapsed, we were told that they were going back on the international market. They did not go back to the original bidders. They went back to the international market. And today, we fear that that refinery would be scrap iron in a few days. And the taxpayers that invested over $9 billion Trinidad and Tobago dollars in that refinery, it will go down the drain because, again, of the incompetence, regrettably, of the Minister of Energy, former Minister of Energy, the incompetence of the government. And we ask the government to please inform us what is the progress as it relates to the refinery. Thank you all. Any question? Yes. Sure.
You raised the issue about the Brazilian variant.
Sure.
And you asked where did it come from.
Sure.
Have you all done any investigations to find out where it originated from and where did the person who brought it in, where it came from?
Well, one of the challenges, of course, in our type of system is that the opposition members, of course, are not in government. We are not part of the establishment in government. We have no official locus with the Ministry of Health, for example, with the police, the TTPS, with the National Security Council. By now, I would have thought that the National Security Council, working in collaboration with the Ministry of Health, would have already done sufficient tracing in such an emergency to establish exactly where this came from, which group of people, for example, in which locality in Trinidad, so we can take emergency steps to curb that. Otherwise, that is another, I'm afraid that is another ticking bomb if we do not confront that. And the government is saying absolutely nothing, and I suspect it's because they're doing absolutely nothing.
We are seeing the numbers increasing as well.
Sure.
Which obviously is a cause for concern. How worrying is it for the opposition knowing that the figures are expanding, it's increasing?
Sure. Well, this is a serious matter because, again, we warned the country about the double standards of the government. They locked out citizens, locked the airport, but kept the borders open around the country. The Prime Minister himself, I want the country to remember, the Prime Minister asked 1.3 million people to come to Tobago for the Easter celebrations, when we knew that it was a reckless thing to be doing, even at that stage, to be encouraging people that way to go really for, you know, a paradise weekend, a long weekend, a paradise weekend. And there were dangers associated with that. And I think that, that the technical people are now suggesting that the spike came as a result of that. But it is certainly a horrible situation to have in excess of 100, and in some cases in excess of 150 cases per day. I remind you, I think the death toll is 158 of this tiny island so far. They have only tested 30,000, they have only administered 30,800 vaccines, so that we are in a very difficult position at this time.
Where do you see us by May 16th?
Let me put it this way, and I make no apologies for saying this. I'm very clear. The sort of capacity, the sort of experience, the sort of expertise we had in the People's Partnership Administration, had we been in office, I have said before, by the end of March, we would have had about 25% of the adult population vaccinated. And by the end of May, we would have had at least 60, if not herd immunity, at 70% by the end of May, early June. Getting the vaccines was never going to be a big problem for us because that is where you exercise international diplomacy, you exercise influence. Part of the problem here is that we have two gentlemen, one in China, one in India, who are unknown, who are not diplomats, who don't have any expertise that we know of, and they represent this country to, I believe, a quarter of the world's population. This is where international diplomacy and influence comes. And I'm confident that had we been in office, we would have had a crack commando team that would have made 1 or 2 trips across the world and come back here with 500,000 doses of vaccines. It is not that hard. It is simply not that hard because, I mean, we took forever to even ask for a donation. We took forever to ask for a donation, and we took more than forever to seek to purchase. And we put all our eggs in the same basket of this COVAX system or so on. And then you don't know, that is linked to other problems. Where there's an outbreak and so on in some Commonwealth area, the vaccines go there first, they're not coming to you. So the government has placed the country in a crisis with their management of the acquisition and procurement of vaccines. I have a question from Joel Brong again. He's asking, given that the Nikon plant is located in the compound of Pointe-a-Pierre, should there be a detailed inspection of all the assets at the refinery location before any sale or lease take place? And I agree. We need to have, but as Senator Roberts said, we really need an independent international team to do a proper assessment of what is happening at that compound and the risk associated with other installations there as well. One question again, sure.
As far concerning the Brazilian variant, and we're sort of marrying it with the issues surrounding our porous borders, the general consensus or a wide diaspora of people are connecting porous borders, of course, with the Brazilian variant.
Sure.
All right. Now, as far as people are concerned, knowing that Latin nationals are coming into this country both illegally and legally,
sure.
Do you think that there's a concern of fear of this community and how it could be treated?
Well, I mean, people are under enormous stress and have enormous fears and vulnerability as well. And if there are a large groups of illegal migrants who themselves, let's put it this way, when you arrive at the 81 illicit entry points, There's no quarantine. There's no isolation. I don't think anybody is at Cedros on the beach with a thermometer checking temperatures as they come or anything like that. So there's a greater risk that migrants can come in with the virus than it is, for example, that you land an aircraft in Piaco, you go through a process, I'm sure. So the risk is higher, therefore the vulnerability is higher, therefore the fear is higher. And that is a logical sequence for human beings. So when we ask the government, tell us where the Brazilian variant 1 is coming from, they have at their disposal the national security apparatus. They have the Ministry of Health surveillance units that can check when the person is positive, where the person came, what were the connections of the person, the tracing, and so on. And I would have thought by now it should not have taken you more than 12 hours to properly, properly trace that.
Let me just
Sure.
take that a bit, and let's make it simply clear. No human being wants to contract COVID-19. So anyone who's playing or pretending that something that is factual and based on science must lead to citizens not liking a certain group and so on, that is nonsense of the highest order. We have a problem. We have been on lockdown. Our citizens cannot come home. And our people cannot come home to bury their mothers, their fathers, their sisters, their brothers. We had, for a period of 54 days last year, 116 positive cases, of which 62 came off a party boat that the PNM had. We had 8 deaths for about 4 months. We are worse off now going into May 2021 than in May 2020. So if you are fighting a war and you are the leader, and your troops are dying, and you are failing, and you're losing territory, you need to resign, you need to be fired. Right now, PNM and Rowley has lost the battle of COVID-19. Why? Because they failed to realize the key issue. You cannot close this door and say, well, we are safe in here, but the windows are open with ladders climbing up. So we love all human beings, and our Prime Minister and our leader of the opposition is a humanitarian. However, our citizens are dying. COVID-19 has now, do you recall, for 54 days, there were no positive cases. In one day, we see 171, we see 81, 161. We see at 8 deaths, we now at 160 deaths, that's 152 extra dead people. And now this Brazilian variant that we're talking about, it could not come in. Because if we were locked, and I like how you posed your question, there seems to be consensus. Yes, anybody with a functioning brain would know that if you are locked down, we are 2 rocks surrounded by water, and nobody coming in, and those who come in through the proper protocols, quarantine, 7-day, 14-day quarantine, and so on, tested, PCR test, everything good, temperature. Where the COVID coming from? Kobo flying and dropping it on us? It is clear that due to the failure of national security to secure the borders, that are now 81 confirmed points of entry, and previously there were claims of 149 points of entry. I go fishing, I just went fishing yesterday. Again, 12 Coast Guard vessels parked up doing nothing outside there. That has been the position from March last year to now. We had the former Minister of National Security lying in the Parliament to say that there were no mechanics from Dayman to come and service them, when he had signed the exemptions for 2. They are not paying diesel. That's why we have no traffic light. We have no CETA. We have no diesel. They are not giving the Coast Guard diesel to patrol. There is no air guard. There has been no air guard for the 14 months of this so-called PNM war on COVID. The air guard has moved from 23 pilots down to 3 pilots. They have 2 planes with radars that don't function. The helicopters are not working and were grounded. The former government bought a helicopter, they park it up in Castlefield and then use it to keep us safe. There are no army camps down from Icacos to Cedros to Fullerton. When I asked the former Minister of National Security, why are there no army camps down there? He said they have army camp in Marabella. He was not even aware of what the Southwest Peninsula is and what the coast is. The mere fact that you are seeing, unfortunately, 25 Venezuelans on a boat coming across and capsizing, 18 people still lost. What does that tell sensible people? That from communication, from WhatsApp groups, from citizens of Venezuela who are here, who came through, that it is easy to come. They are escaping to live. And you have to respect that, you have to love them, but we have no system to take care of them and protect them. Unfortunately, our citizens are suffering, and under illegal immigration, you cannot find an illegal immigrant. So how are you going to swab their nose? You have Dr. Avery Hines and Dr. Roshan Parasam telling us that illegal immigrants did not have anything to do with COVID-19. So where did it come from? Did Kobo drop it? The minister, Dialsing, said there's only one Venezuelan in hospital. Anyone who understands illegal immigrants know that they don't go to governmental institutions. They are illegal. They don't want to be deported. They want to stay under the radar, work, and send their money back. They are not coming here to spread COVID, but COVID is rampant in Venezuela. The numbers we don't even know because Maduro don't even care about his own people. We don't know what's their situation. They have no food, no water, no medicine, no vaccine, no nothing. So they are coming. For them to come on a pirogue, think about it, they cannot even swim. For you to get in a pirogue in the dark of night, there must be some knowledge or information that says it's a successful, once you make it here, you're good. How does that happen? Venezuelans have WhatsApp groups and so on, say, yes, come true. We going good, we working here, we moving. It getting harder, but still it's better than Venezuela. So the national security apparatus has failed. We have failed in the war against COVID-19 because Keith Rowley and his government are incompetent, and now he gives us a gift of incompetence through Fitzgerald Hines. The borders are porous. The Brazilian variant could only have come through porous borders. They are saying now the information is that from the first case, the other 4, because there are 5 total cases as of yesterday, are not connected to the first one. That is very scary, because if it was connected to one, you can say scientifically we can attack it, we can hold it, we could quarantine it, we could track it, and we could eliminate it. But if you do not know, and the PNM does not know where it come from, how it come from, where it's spreading, we are in danger, and it's very serious.
Okay. Thank you all very much. It's our time to adjourn. So thank you all. I want to thank you for coming, the very few of you in the room, and thank the reporters and members of the press joining us virtually, and to thank the audience locally and internationally for tuning in this morning. In the coming days, the United National Congress and the opposition in Trinidad and Tobago will continue to speak on some of these critical issues in the public domain. So we look forward later in the week to several more programs, and certainly we will keep the national and international community abreast of our views on these matters. Thank you all for joining, and have an extremely safe day.